We're excited. Put your hands together for Wally Rudolph.
Thank you, Christine. Christine also hosts a podcast called Storyworthy. You guys can check it out. It's on iTunes. You should subscribe to it. It may be of interest to you to subscribe to it before this Thursday because a certain writer might be on it, and then you can listen to it again. I want to thank Skylight Books for having me here. I think this sort of event is really indicative of what a locally independent-owned bookstore can offer versus an online retail giant. The fact that a real literary institution opened their doors to me, a first-time novelist, is awesome. And I appreciate it. You guys have no idea. I also want to thank my entire team at Soft Skull, Dan Smetanka, Claire Shalinsky, Megan Fishman, Katie, I forgot Katie's last name. None of them are here tonight, but I wanted to put that out there because it's good juju and because I'm recording this shit and I might edit them in and I want them to know that I really thank them. I finished the first draft of Four Corners in late 2007. It took me a solid year to finish the first draft of the manuscript. It took me 2.5 years after that to secure my literary agent, my super literary agent, Amy Tipton. And it took me 2.5 years after that to find Dan Smetanka over at Soft Skull. So altogether it took me about 7 years to get this book to this day. People have asked me, all you guys, my close friends have asked me like what it's been like to have the book finally published, because you guys know it have been kind of seeing me struggling with that whole process. And the metaphor I thought of is it was so similar to kind of that I ended up landing with was it's kind of like having a phantom limb, in the sense that here's this huge extension of myself that I put a lot of my blood, sweat, and tears into, and that I couldn't show anyone for the longest time. And that, a little bit that's on me because I was groomed into the traditional publishing process, so I did want the validation of going through a traditional publisher, and also to have the chance to have it critically reviewed was a big thing for me. So I own that, but at the same time, there's up days, good days and bad days with it. And the bad days where I'm giving myself affirmations in the bathroom mirror, and the good days where I'm just proud of myself that I finished it. But I'm saying all that because it's when in moments like this, even though it's small, it's really special to me. I take it for granted in my youth and when I was a younger artist, but this is like it means so much that you guys showed up, that you guys buy the book. It is absolutely, it's a really sacred relationship between artist and audience that no matter what happens with technology and everything else, I don't think it's a covenant that can be corrupted by the way all the trends that move back and forth and everything moves so fast nowadays. This right here, to me, is what it's all about as an artist. So thank you so much, and I'm going to read now from the second chapter of Four Corners, and we'll go at it for a bit, and then we're not too long, and then I'll take a few questions, and after that we'll sign some books, hang out, and say hello, hello, hello. So let's do this. This is from the second chapter, and our lovers, our protagonists, Ben and Maddie, have already been on the road for a day, and they wake up on New Year's 2000 to this mess. The shame is Ben drove through the night. His hand wouldn't heal. He'd been taking blood thinners and a crapshoot from the medicine cabinet back home. I call that God's work. It'll never heal. His legal paper cast was soaked black. Blood collected on Noni's kitchen table. His eyes were swollen shut and his face had been insulted by a heel. Ben's head was thrown back in a dead man's pose. His long, dirty hair matted to his cheeks while his clouded breath barely kept him alive in this new year. The shame is Ben forgot we spoke. He said he heard my voice calling to him from a private parlor in downtown Santa Fe. The type where once a year cash is paid to a quiet house manager who keeps your liquor stocked in a silver cigar box filled with up-and-comers and proven champs. I did call him to wish him a happy new year. I heard music and women laughing. Tough timbers of sex and booze poured through Noni's kitchen phone. Ben didn't remember hiding in the bathroom talking for an hour on the depth of highway cement and the best disappearing act we'd ever seen. We spoke on all of it. I told him about Colorado and Maddie's parents, how we ended up at Nomi's. I said I was tired outside of Denver. The sight of Ben put Maddie in a hiss. She took Ben at face value. All she saw was a strung-out, deadbeat father. She stood behind him, still in her dress from the past night. She propped his head up on her sequin chest and wiped his face with a wet kitchen rag. He kept on trying to babble through. He was at the parlor. We spoke while he was at the parlor. He drove out to his old house. He wanted to make things right. I had to make things right, he mumbled. It was thieving talk. The whole speech stank of it. Maddie wanted him to repeat what he said, but I wanted to hear the truth. Why'd you go out there, Ben? Why would you go out there? I pushed. Ben grabbed the rag from Maddie's hand and held it over his right eye. He rolled his head around and opened his other eye as wide as he could. Look at me, Frank. Things have changed. I won't let him take my son. Maddie took his arm and helped him to the couch. He stumbled forward, his feet falling like he was wading on sticks. He kept saying, thank you. Thank you for everything, Maddie. I picked up his car keys from the table and went out the front door. Ben Schenk was born Polish, but his daddy bought some Pueblo blood into the family soul. The Schenks made their family fortune from partial ownership in the native casinos peppered throughout the Southwest. His father, Marcus, had only one son, was white, and claimed his Pueblo blood through a 5-year magic spell called the admission thread. Back when the casinos were just breaking ground, Marcus paid in $50,000 cash and signed over a 27% stake in all of the Schenks' assets worth over $5,000 to the Pueblo Nation. For that, a tribal elder sowed the Schenks' white blood into the tribe. Ben told me he was just a kid, but he remembered when the man which came to his house wearing a one-piece work suit cut off at the knees. He said the medicine man milled dirt in their backyard till dead Pueblo told him when the Schenks arrived in the States. He burned driftwood and ate chorizo until he was sure Warren Schenk, Ben's great-great-grandfather, never spilled any Pueblo blood in the Great Revolt, swindled land deals, or raped their squaws under winter moons. When the check cleared, the medicine man ran a stone knife across little Ben's chest and collected his 6-year-old blood. He mixed it with a vulture's egg, desert rock fungus, and trickled drops into all the New Mexican rivers surrounding Pueblo land. The Schenks were now a tax-exempt tribe, able to claim federal money and profit share in one of the richest native gambling empires in the nation. When Ben got out of university, Marcus set him up with a mansion in a gated community outside of Santa Fe. He hired Ben on to look after all the family interests in the local casinos, Camel Rock, Big Rock, Sandia. Over the years, Marcus had started thinking less and less of his tribal business partners. The old man smelled numbers cooking and peace pipe accounting. He bought estates all across Arizona and New Mexico to keep an eye on all the Schenk money. That was Ben's job for a long time before we met. He was put together, mean and greedy. He said his father always told him to say, "Take it easy, Chief. I'm just looking out for all of us in the tribe." Everything was breaking the Schenks' way until Ben met the blonde Miss New Mexico in 1987, Allie Sharp. Nothing but a steady, calculated whore with a numbed-out cunt for hours and hours of ragged-out sex. 5 months after they met, they were married. 4 months after the wedding, their son Sean was born, and when Ben looked on his baby for the first time, he saw a grand wager for himself. The chance to change his selfish route and forget the Schenk virtues of jealousy, envy, and unhinged greed. Ben enrolled Sean in a private Bohemian school, taught his son to read himself, took him into the canyons and showed him the shallow rivers in drought, gave him a mutt and a bicycle and turned him loose. Marcus fumed and Allie got her angle. She opened a separate bank account and started shaving off the monthly stipends from the family trust. One by one, she changed the locks around the house and sent pictures to Marcus of his grandson, sole heir to the family gold, shirtless in a Pueblo headdress, learning a rain dance at the private academy of youth education and holistic wellness. The old man flew to Santa Fe that night, punched Ben in the face and put a .25 pistol in Sean's hand. "Don't let your father ruin you, Sean. Define yourself," is what Marcus screamed. But Sean couldn't do it. He ran into the empty, dark desert outside the mansion's gates, and did a small rain dance around a pile of rotted out chamisa. Ben said Sean's dance saved his life. A neighbor driving home called the police when he saw the 6-year-old half naked with dirt and tears on his face. And when the cops took Sean home, they came on Marcus and Ben and a hunting rifle. I was all Ben had. He came to me and fell apart, telling me how Allie stole custody of Sean, how she had turned him on to Los Alamos cocaine. He said Marcus had moved into the mansion, hired his big Jew accountant to tutor and bodyguard Sean, and was now fucking Allie day after day. Marcus told Ben, his own son, to his face, that he couldn't help himself. Allie's pussy made him feel close to God. That was it. Did I read too fast? Good. If you guys got any questions, I'll take a few questions. And yes, I am available for children's parties. I'm more than happy to read this and scare some children. If there are any questions, I'll take a few questions. If not, we can adjourn. Oh, yes, Christine.
Tell us more about, okay, so this is the second chapter.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about what happens now? What happens next?
The book is equal parts a meditation on the Southwest and a literary thriller, as my friend said, a hardcore head trip through the Southwest. It is Frank and Maddie are at the center of the story, their relationship. Frank is a 37-year-old ex-junkie, and Maddie is a 20-year-old young junkie. And Frank is trying to go straight, and he gets dragged into this kidnapping with Ben, his best friend. Then they go through the four corners of the Southwest, getting chased, and I think it's as much about the landscape of the Southwest is kind of the backdrop, but it's also about kind of my own experiences with addiction and with that world, and kind of a big memorial to all of that. So.
You grew up in the Southwest?
No, I went to college out there, and I spent some time. I went to a small school called College of Santa Fe in New Mexico, and it's now defunct. But I went to school there, and then after I dropped out, I kind of kicked around New Mexico for a while. And it's a pretty unique, Santa Fe specifically in New Mexico is a pretty unique state, just because of the demographics and the socioeconomic problems. You've got specifically Santa Fe, because you have such the extremely wealthy and absolutely no middle class. The local population is very poor, so you have extremely wealthy and very poor, and they also suffer a lot of the Native American reservations had the meth epidemic much earlier than the rest of the country. They were dealing with that, and the book gets into Chiva, which was a late 90s. I think it's just made another resurgence, which was back when I was growing up. It was called Chiva, but it was cheap snortable heroin, which kind of started out of Mexico and went through Texas and then came back up through the Southwest. I don't think it made it that way north, but I think it's kind of made it's having a second go at it right now. Like all drugs, they get remarketed to the youth. So yeah, that is. But it is exciting, and it is a page turner, and all that being said, as all that other stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
What were your drug addictions?
We got a lot. What time is this? What time are you guys close? I've done a lot of drugs. Everything that's in the book I've done. I think personally, it's interesting to see what drugs end up people gravitating toward. I think at the end of the day, predictably, I was into booze and cocaine, but along the way, to me, kind of settling on that in my 20s, I did just about everything under the sun. I think, it's. For me, it's always interesting the way a lot of drug addicts and the way the life of the journey of addiction is portrayed in the media is that it's this someone like gets hooked on crack, and they're gonna stay on. I mean, from my experience and the people that I've spent time with, it's what do you got, how much you got, let's go until it's done, and whatever's clever. You know, I was smoking crack. It was the first day I was smoking. When I was supposed to take the SAT for the first time, I was smoking crack, and then later on in the day, the next day I'm tripping acid. It was. I don't think it's not as tidy as it's portrayed. But like I said, it's interesting what you end up settling down with, and kind of ends up feeding your monkey. Yeah.
As a writer, what was your experience mining that material for a story?
I think this book, I wrote, like I said, this took me about 7 years. So at the time, I was coming off of, I didn't do 12-step. I did probably about 6 years of pretty hardcore therapy. That's how I came to my sobriety. And I think in the process, when I got about halfway through it, first thing I noticed, I could finish the book. It was the first book that I had started. I had started a lot of books. I was like, I can finish this book. I know this book. All the other books I had started, I was like, I'm gonna write something. It's gonna be incredible. But this was a book that I started. I was like, I know these people. I know this world. I can finish it. And then once I was into it and I was really invested in it, I think I had the realization that I was writing it to as much to memorialize that part of my life and to revisit all those people and that world as I was to have a book done. It was, I think, during the time it was really exciting. I think this last round of edits, I think it was much different because now that I'm so removed from it, that going back specifically to this world with Frank, because it's first person all the way through, was difficult because it was definitely taking a big step back and getting back into his shoes, which are not, I like to say there's a lot of me in Frank, there's not a lot of Frank in me. But so there's like echoes of a lot of the same emotions that I had when I was writing it, but it's I don't like romanticizing the shit because it pisses me off. I don't think the drug addiction validates the work, and I've been really adamant about that along the publishing process. I don't want it to validate the work. It's what I happen to know about and what I happen to focus on here. But if that's all you're seeing, you're missing it. I don't think that, I didn't want to write an addiction story and say, it's valid because I did it, man, this is legit. Like, I can't, I think that that's so overplayed and we lose so many good artists because of that, because it's total, it's literally BS. It's not true. I think somebody said that you got to keep in mind that all these great artists that everybody's saying that they did drugs to create the work, they created that work in spite of the drugs. They didn't create it because of it. And it's a shame that we lose so many people because of it. Because addiction's real. And now there needs to be more transparency, I think, in the artist community as far as addressing that it's cool to like put on a hat and, smoke your cigarettes and do your whole thing, that you stay up late at night with your bottle of bourbon and everything. But dude, there are about 100 other guys that are totally doing it straight. They're going to publish way before you. They're going to have so much more success, and what you want so badly, you're literally destroying. You can't outrun it. So that's my show about.
Am I allowed to ask a question?
Yes, Mom.
I'm curious if you had any other kind of goals around kind of the portraying the origins of addiction?
No, I think the goal is, and it always will be with all my work, is whether it's this or poverty or anybody that's living on the fringe. I really focus on the fringe, people living on the fringe, is that wants to present the work a realistic, an unsentimental portrait of the world, but doing it with compassion and trying to walk that line. In that, I mean that I'm trying to create, show the world to these people as it really is. The best thing you can do, and the best comments I get for this are people who read it, who struggle with addiction or gone through or been inside them, will be like, this feels real, great, I love that. But at the same time, that I'm not trying to like mine it. I'm not trying to mine it. I'm not trying to glorify it. I'm not trying to, but it still showed that these people are real. My greatest hopes is that when you look at, you come across a junkie on the street, when you're walking down the street, or somebody that's really struggling, that you take and you can stop and say, this person has a huge interior life going on, despite they can't see that, they're kind of going down at the moment. That doesn't negate that their emotional life is just as valid and vibrant as anybody else's, as anybody that's sober. So yeah. Yes, Jared.
Whose voice were you reading in?
This was Frank's. I think Desiree and I were talking about that earlier. Yeah, that's. I just finished. On a side note, the book's literally today is available on iTunes and Audible.com, and I was lucky enough to do the performance of it all the way through. So that if you're not big readers, you guys can check that out. But I got to read it. I didn't. To your question, I was worried. I wasn't worried. I was like, I've spent so much time reading this book. I'm gonna know it. I know the book. But once I got in the booth, I was surprised whose voices landed where, because it wasn't a really super conscious thing. It was just kind of like, let's see, and then the characters kind of took on their life as I got deeper into it. And yeah, I'm a big believer that Frank is equal parts Johnny Cash and Lil Wayne. I think if you've been there, if you're scoring, it's funny when you're freebasing at like 3 o'clock in the morning in Las Vegas, and to your right is a school teacher, and to your right is like a 30-year-old Army dropout, and over there is a serious Hoover crib, and everybody's talking serious street, but everybody understands what's going on. And that to me is what I was trying to capture in his world, in his language and the diction that I use, is that there's kind of, once you get low enough, everybody understands, despite where they're coming from. Everybody knows junkie talk and who's saying what, despite, and it always blew my mind in the moment where I was just like, how does that work? Like, how do you know how do you understand that? Because you're so from the other side of town. But they always did, and everybody had a lot of laughs in those moments, and that's what I was trying to reach with my writing. But it's refined too. I'm a language junkie, so it's trying to capture all that, trying to capture that world, and the text to live in that world where the music of the language is complementing the truth of the characters, because I think that's where some real magic happens for the reader, and where I can take you on some rides. Yes, Desiree?
So I heard you don't want to romanticize it.
Right.
You want to look at it without sentimentality, but you also want compassion.
Yes.
So wow, that sounds amazing. I mean, really.
I don't know if I achieve it. I
Well,
try.
I'm really, from what I heard, Wally, I can't wait to read it. But I also wonder if you had other writers that you saw were doing that, or if there are other, or.
I make no both. I mean, to me, I think any writer of my generation, Dennis Johnson's kind of the pope for us, and when he came out with all his work was really transformative to my whole generation that were in writing school at the time. It's just it's like before and after for us is what he was doing. That being said, he as quickly as I don't think he wanted that title as much as being like the guy, like the wounded soul out there, but his work, it's by itself, it's so singular, his work, both his poetry and his prose in every form. So there's that writers. Yeah, I think to be honest, I read more poetry than I do fiction. So if I have fiction writers, yeah, I was groomed, my teacher Jack Butler, I was groomed in the Southern literary tradition, so I'm a big fan of Barry Hannah, Jack Butler. Hopefully you can feel that in the way that I play the stories out. But I'm also like, I'm a real language fan, and I will sit and read a lot of poetry to get the brevity and the strength of what they're doing in poetry, and I try to work that into my fiction, as much as I can to answer your question. So yes, that is it. Thank you. Oh yes.
Sorry. I'm just wondering, because you mentioned it took a while to get published even once the book was finished. Just because I know, like, I met your beautiful baby. So since it was published to now, did you, in these last rounds of edits, did your life now affect it at all? Or were you able to kind of time capsule it back to that specific?
I think to some extent. I think specifically I think more so in the performance, just because of the relationship with Sean and Frank. Those two characters, that Sean's a younger boy, and the relationship with Ben and his son also. Not so much, I wouldn't say, maybe moving forward, but in this specifically because it's in Frank, it's in first person, that there's only so much that the emotional kind of range of Frank it's limited to his world, and that was really defined. Now, with all the time going by, that's a really defined world, like where Frank lives and how he thinks about things, very, very defined. If I was to try to get in there, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't. It'd be like children are happy and beautiful and the butterfly. Like he wouldn't think about that at all, ever. Not in that sense, anyway. But yeah, I look at it differently. I look at the book differently. I look at my art differently since Fred's been born, big time. I don't take it for granted, and I'm more conscious of what I'm putting out there, because it's not going to be much fun going forward. I think the world's a crazy place, crazy place. And when he gets to be my age, I can't imagine what it's going to be like. All right, so let's wrap it up, and thank you guys for coming.